History tour of the Joseph W. House house. I'd like to thank Doug Melkovitz. Doug's back here. Thank you, Doug, and Lee Fleming for allowing us to tour their beautiful home. Let's give them a round of applause. This tour is worth 1 hour of HSW continuing education credit through the American Institute of Architects. And if you're interested in that credit, you can see me after the tour. Located in the Governor's Mansion Historic District, the Joseph House was built about 1892, and it's an example of a transitional Queen Anne with a Colonial Revival-style front porch. Joseph Warren House Sr. was born on June 12, 1847 in Hardeman County, Tennessee, to A.B. House and his wife Eliza Wilkes House. In 1858, the House family moved from Tennessee to White County, Arkansas, and took up farming. In 1863, although he was only 16 years old, Joseph House enlisted in the Confederate Army. After the war, he returned to White County and studied law under an attorney at West Point, which is located on the west bank of the Little Red River, about 9 miles from Searcy. House was admitted to the bar in 1869 and practiced law at Searcy. In 1871, he was elected to represent White County in the General Assembly and helped draft Arkansas's 5th and current Constitution during the Convention of 1874. In 1874 and 75, House served as state senator, representing White and Faulkner counties. House moved to Little Rock in 1885 and practiced law, serving as U.S. District Attorney for the Eastern District of Arkansas during the first and second administrations of President Grover Cleveland, which would be from 1885 to 89, and then again from 1893 to 97. He practiced law with his nephew, Menifee House, in the firm of House and House, and later with D.H. Cantrell in the firm of House and Cantrell, but practiced independently for the majority of his career. In 1906 and 07, Mr. House served as the president of the Arkansas Bar Association. In 1882, Joseph House married Ina Dowdy of Memphis, Tennessee, and the couple had 5 children: Arlene, Joseph Jr., Mary, Ina, and Archie. Arlene married Alfred M. Lund, who was a civil engineer with the Little Rock firm of Lund and Hill. Joseph Jr. married Julia Clark, daughter of James P. Clark, who was the 18th governor of Arkansas and a U.S. senator. And Mary became Mrs. Horace G. Mitchell, and Mitchell was president of Democrat Printing and Lithographing Company. Ina may have married after 1951, but as of that time, she was in her early 60s and still single. And I know for a fact Archie House lived to be 100 and never married. And I'll talk a lot about Archie House at the end. According to Dallas Herndon's Centennial History of Arkansas, published in 1922, Joseph W. House Sr. was affectionately called the Grand Old Man of Arkansas and was known throughout the state for his, quote, simple and unpretentious manner, a keen sense of humor, a kindly, sympathetic interest in all children, a marked chivalry toward women, and the highest sense of personal honor. He was regarded as the, quote, old-fashioned, ideal Southern gentleman. Joseph House Sr. died on March 10, 1926, here at his home after a brief illness. He was 78 years old. The funeral was held here in the family home, and he was buried at Roselawn Memorial Park. His honorary pallbearers included Charles L. Thompson, George B. Rose, Charles H. Bruff, and Joseph T. Robinson, just to give you an idea of how prominent he was in Arkansas. All also well-known figures. When Joseph House moved to Little Rock in 1885, he lived at 501 Arch and then at 1506 Arch. About 1892, this house was built for the House family. The home generally adheres to the Queen Anne style with its irregular form, asymmetrical facade, multiple porches, and fish scale shingles in the front gable end. However, the front porch represents a transition to the Colonial Revival-style, which was becoming popular in Little Rock by the 1890s. According to the 1900 census, Joseph Sr., Ina, and all 5 of their children were here at 2126 South Arch, along with 2 servants, Rebecca and James. By 1910, daughter Mary had moved out of her parents' house. The 1910 census showed the rest of the children still at home, along with Joseph House's brother-in-law, J.F. Dowdy, and 2 servants, Ida Craig and Ramsey Smith. By 1920, son Joseph Jr. and daughter Ina had also moved out of the house. By that time, occupants were Joseph Sr., his wife Ina, son Archie, daughter Arlene House Lund and her husband Alfred Lund, and a servant named Blanche. Joseph House Sr. died in 1926, and his widow, Ina D. House, remained at 2126 Arch Street. By 1930, Ina House lived here with her children Arlene, Ina, and Archie, as well as a maid named Maggie and a cook named Frances. By 1935, Archie House had finally moved out. He was only 40. He moved to Pulaski Heights and later lived further west on Highway 10. But his mother, Ina D. House, remained here in the family home with her daughter, Ina. So you have Ina and Ina, mother and daughter, until the elder's death, the mother's death, on January 6, 1940, at the age of 79. And her funeral was also held here in the home, and she was buried at Roselawn. After the death of Ina D. House in 1940, her heirs used the family home here on Arch Street as a rental property. The 1940 city directory listed Frederick McCann and his wife Marie at the address. McCann worked as a salesman for Arkansas Hatcheries, and by 1950 the home was rented to 3 different couples in kind of a boarding house type arrangement. In 1957, the home was sold out of the Joseph House family and purchased by Virgil G. Bailey and his wife Ethel, and Bailey worked in the construction industry. Virgil Bailey died in 1975, and his widow, Ethel, continued to live in the house until the mid-1990s. And during the 40 years that the Bailey family had the house, so from roughly 1957 to 1997, it served as their residence as well as a boarding house. At some point, the front porch, this big wraparound front porch, was completely closed in to make more living space. About 1997, the house was purchased by Dr. Kevin Collins and his wife Nancy, and Collins did a major rehab of the house at that time, including the removal of siding to expose the original weatherboard exterior, reopening the front porch, and rebuilding the back section of the house to raise the height of the second floor up to the height of the rest of the second floor. It was a little bit shorter, I think, originally on the back, and added an additional 5 feet to the rear of the structure as well. Collins restored as much of the interior millwork as possible, but he ended up having to replicate and replace much of it, including trim and spindles on the staircase. Collins also built the 3-car garage. If you haven't noticed, I know at least Charles has seen it out back. He's checked it out. But it's now on the southwest corner of the property. They built that. Historically, the carriage house / garage was at the northwest corner of the backyard. The house was damaged by the 1999 tornado that came through and devastated the neighborhood. So they had done all that work on it, and the tornado came through. So they had to redo some things, and it damaged the chimneys, the brick chimneys. You'll notice those look a little bit shorter than they should be. That's because the tops were taken off by the tornado and they didn't rebuild them. Doug Melkovitz and Lee Fleming bought the house in 2012 and installed a new roof and HVAC system with the help of the State Historic Rehabilitation Tax Credit. And after analyzing the footprint of the house on Sanborn fire insurance maps from 1913, 1939, and 1950, which are the years that the house appears on Little Rock's maps. The exterior of the home, the outside footprint, has changed very little over the years. A small side porch or stoop was added on, and that's back through this back door of the dining room. You can see that stoop out that side. It was put on the south side of the house sometime between 1913 and 1939. And then also during that time, a portion of the north side porch, which you can see off the kitchen whenever you go back there, was enclosed to create what's now restrooms. There's a downstairs and upstairs restroom where they enclosed that little portion. So there's a couple windows, one by the staircase around this way and one as you're going up the stairs, that used to look out onto the back porch on the north side. And now those windows look into bathrooms. Frosted glass may go into bathrooms. Some interior details about the house. It's now 4,500 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, original oak floors in this front portion of the house. And notice whenever you go up the stairs, notice the ornate newel post on the staircase. Original mantles you see throughout these 3 rooms and also in what was the library that is now the office, and that's off limits for today. And the house originally had the 2 sets of pocket doors downstairs, and this one is no longer there or workable, but you can see this one is still here. You can see evidence in the floor in this dining room, maybe, unless the table covers it up, of the call button in the floor. You can see where they cut out the little circle around it where it patches the floor right there. But that's where, if you were sitting eating dinner, you put your foot and press the button to call the help to come in and bring you whatever you needed. The butler's pantry originally was back through this doorway between the dining room and what's now their TV room or sitting room. The present-day kitchen in the back of the house, that's in that new section of the house that was rebuilt by the Collins family. And the house has lots of antique fixtures in it, but none of those are original to the home. And then if you look out on the north porch that's screened in, whenever you get to looking around, the pergola and deck on the north side obviously were built new by Doug and Lee. Okay, so I've already mentioned the children of Joseph House Sr., but I wanted to give you a little bit more information about a couple of them because they were well-known Little Rock residents in their own right, and they lived here in the house for many years as well. And I told you Archie didn't move out till he was over 40, so he spent a good part of his life here. But in order to avoid confusion, I wanted to say this part for the end because their daddy built the house, but his kids were significant as well. Joseph House Sr. and his wife Ina had the 2 sons, Joseph House Jr. and Archie, both of whom grew up to be prominent Little Rock attorneys like their father. Born in 1885, Joseph Jr. was a graduate of Little Rock High School, the University of Arkansas, and Columbia Law School. He was a partner in the Little Rock firm of House, Moses, and Holmes, and that would be with C. Hamilton Moses, who was legal counsel and later president of Arkansas Power and Light Company, and the person for whom Lake Hamilton is named, and Willis H. Holmes, and he was partner in that firm until his death in 1954. And this law firm later became House, Holmes, Butler, and Jewell, and I'm so glad Richard's here. Richard Butler is here. His father was a partner in that firm, Dick Butler, and you too. Archie was the youngest of the 5 House children. He was born on June 29, 1892, and died on June 30th, 1992, the day after his 100th birthday. He served as a Little Rock municipal judge and a Pulaski County circuit judge. He resigned from the bench in 1925 to join the Rose, Cantrell, and Loughborough firm, which later became the Rose Law Firm. House represented the Little Rock School District for 6 years, all during the time before, during, and after the Little Rock Central High integration crisis. He was a proponent of the Blossom Plan, and he was very good friends with Virgil Blossom, the superintendent of Little Rock Public Schools at that time, and that the Blossom Plan was the first plan they came up with that outlined a very, very slow, gradual integration of Little Rock Public Schools starting at the high school level. In her book, which is called Turn Away Thy Son, Little Rock, the Crisis That Shocked the Nation, Elizabeth Jakeway described Archie House as a paternalistic gentleman who epitomized the views of the Little Rock establishment in the late 1950s. She wrote, quote, "Archie House is an institution in Little Rock, a central figure in the downtown establishment, a welcome and sought-after guest in the city's leading social circles, a somewhat eccentric, lovable old bachelor with one of the best law practices in town. In his 100th year, he continued to dress in coat and tie, even in the nursing home." So that gives you a little bit of flavor about Archie House. And he served as president of the Arkansas Bar Association and president of the Board of Trustees of the Little Rock Public Library. In fact, he was instrumental in getting the library millage passed in the 1940s, and he even left money to the library in his will, which is still one of their endowments today. By all accounts, Archie House was quite a character. And one other thing I had to tell you about him, about Archie House, is back in his early days, he was a member of the Boathouse, which if any of you have read the articles that Mary Worthen wrote in the Pulaski County Historical Review about the Boathouse, it was the classic rowing club down by the river at the foot of Main Street, and it burned in 1938. But anyway, anybody who was anybody in society in Little Rock belonged to the Boathouse. So on Labor Day of 1919, Archie House participated in the high jump event there at the Boathouse, and that was he and another man climbed down a pier on the old Free Bridge, which was before the current Main Street Bridge, to a platform that was built out off one of the stone piers. It was about 60 feet high up above the water, and they dove off of it. And Archie House did a backflip on his way down, and it was just this big thing that Archie House jumped off the Main Street Bridge. And Ina House, one more of their kids and then I'm done. Ina House, the daughter of Joseph Sr. and his wife Ina, she worked as a stenographer and a secretary for much of her career. During the 30s and 40s, she worked for the Reconstruction and Finance Corporation in that capacity. But in the early 1920s, she founded the Business and Professional Women's Club in Little Rock. So I get the feeling that she was a pretty progressive lady too. A couple announcements. Next Saturday, December 13th, we're going to do our Walks Through History tour, the series of tours that I do around the state in different places. And it's going to be at the Taylor House near Monticello in Drew County. And if any of you have heard of that, it's a really cool project, 1846, two-story log dog trot style house on the bank of Bayou Bartholomew. It's very interesting. It's been acquired by the University of Arkansas at Monticello, and they're going to restore it and use it to interpret the history of one of the state's earliest cotton plantations. So that's going to be next Saturday at 11 a.m. You can get with me after this if you want directions. And then our next sandwiching tour is Friday, January the 9th, and that's not the first Friday, that's the second Friday in January. And it'll be at Little Rock Fire Station number 2, or what's going to be the Fire Station Hostel in MacArthur Park. That's at 1201 South Commerce Street at noon.